Throughout human history, war and finance have been deeply connected. Every major conflict has relied on systems of money, trade, debt, and resources. Armies do not move only with courage or ideology. They move with food, metals, fuel, and trust in payment. Behind every battlefield stands a network of financiers, merchants, workers, and states that make war possible. To understand wars, it is not enough to study generals and weapons. One must also study banks, currencies, trade routes, and economic pressure. In ancient times, wars were often fought for direct control of wealth. Land meant crops, mines meant metal, ports meant trade. When empires expanded, they did so to secure steady flows of resources. The Roman Empire offers a clear example. Roman armies conquered territories that could provide grain from Egypt, silver from Hispania, and taxes from many provinces. Finance was not a side issue. It was central. Roman roads were built not only for soldiers but also for commerce. Taxes funded legions, and legions enforced tax collection. When the financial system weakened through corruption, inflation, and overspending, the empire struggled to defend its borders. Coinage played a crucial role in ancient warfare. A stable currency allowed rulers to pay soldiers regularly. When coins lost value, soldiers lost loyalty. In later Roman history, emperors reduced the silver content of coins to fund constant wars. This caused inflation and distrust. Trade suffered and local economies declined. War finance without restraint damaged the very structure that supported military power. In the medieval world, finance and war were shaped by feudal systems and emerging trade networks. Kings relied on nobles for troops but needed money to hire mercenaries and buy equipment. Italian city-states such as Venice and Genoa became powerful not because of vast lands but because of financial skill and trade dominance. They funded wars through loans and profited from supplying both sides. Banking families gained influence by financing monarchs. When rulers failed to repay debts, bankers gained political leverage. The Crusades illustrate how war reshaped financial relations across regions. European powers borrowed heavily to fund expeditions to distant lands. Trade routes expanded as a result of contact with the Eastern Mediterranean. Banking instruments such as letters of credit became more common to move wealth safely. War created risk but also opportunity. Merchants adapted faster than kings. Over time, financial centers grew in places that mastered war funding without constant destruction. The early modern period marked a turning point. Gunpowder warfare increased costs dramatically. Armies became larger. Fortifications required heavy investment. States that could raise taxes efficiently and borrow at low cost gained military advantage. This era gave rise to the fiscal military state. War and finance became institutionalized. Governments created permanent tax systems, national debts, and central banks. The Dutch Republic demonstrated the power of financial innovation. Despite limited population and land, it became a major military and naval power. Its strength came from efficient taxation, strong credit markets, and investor trust. Dutch bonds were seen as reliable. This allowed the state to borrow at lower cost than rivals. Financial credibility translated into military resilience. England followed a similar path. After internal conflict, the state reformed its financial system. The creation of a central bank and a funded national debt allowed long-term borrowing. Investors trusted that Parliament would honor debts. This trust enabled Britain to fight prolonged wars against stronger continental powers. Finance allowed endurance. Endurance often decided victory. Colonial wars further exposed the link between finance and conflict. European powers competed for overseas resources and markets. Wars were fought not only for territory but for trade dominance. Control of shipping lanes and colonies meant access to sugar, spices, cotton, and later oil. These goods fueled industrial growth at home. War expenses were justified by expected economic gains. However, colonial wars also created heavy debt. Empires expanded but financial strain grew. The cost of defending distant territories often exceeded revenue. The British Empire faced this dilemma after major wars. Taxes rose. Discontent spread. In some cases, financial pressure led to rebellion. The American War of Independence emerged partly from disputes over taxation and debt repayment after a costly global conflict. The industrial age transformed war finance again. Factories replaced workshops. Steel, coal, and later electricity became strategic resources. Wars now depended on industrial capacity and financial mobilization. Governments issued war bonds and appealed to citizens to fund the state. Propaganda linked patriotism with investment. Finance entered the homes of ordinary people. The First World War marked a dramatic escalation. European powers assumed the war would be short. They financed it through borrowing rather than taxation. When the conflict dragged on, debts exploded. Gold standards were suspended. Inflation rose. Entire economies were redirected toward war production. Banks and governments became tightly linked. The financial aftermath reshaped global politics. Some states emerged heavily indebted. Others gained influence as creditors. The United States shifted from debtor to major lender. War debts and reparations created complex financial chains. Economic instability followed. Attempts to enforce harsh financial penalties fueled resentment and political extremism. The Second World War deepened these patterns. Total war required total economic mobilization. Governments controlled prices, wages, and production. Central banks supported massive spending. After the war, new financial institutions were created to stabilize the system. International bodies aimed to prevent economic collapse and reduce the chance of future wars. Yet finance remained a tool of power. During the Cold War, direct conflict between major powers was limited, but economic pressure became central. Aid, loans, and sanctions were used to influence allies and rivals. Military alliances were supported by financial flows. Development aid often carried strategic conditions. Modern wars continue this trend. Military operations rely on complex supply chains, global finance, and technology investment. Private contractors play large roles. Defense industries depend on government budgets and international sales. Conflicts affect markets, energy prices, and currencies worldwide. Sanctions have become a key weapon. Instead of direct invasion, states attempt to isolate rivals financially. Access to banking systems, trade, insurance, and currency reserves can be restricted. These measures aim to weaken economies without open war. Their effectiveness varies, but they show how finance itself has become a battlefield. At the same time, war creates profit for some actors. Arms manufacturers, logistics firms, and reconstruction companies gain contracts. This raises ethical questions. When financial incentives align with conflict, there is risk of prolonged instability. Transparency and regulation become crucial yet difficult during crises. Debt remains a persistent issue. Wars are often financed by future promises. The burden falls on later generations. High military spending can crowd out education, health, and infrastructure. States must balance security with long-term economic stability. History shows that wars rarely end when finances collapse alone. But financial strain limits options. Empires fall not only from defeat but from inability to pay soldiers, maintain trust, and support society. Money does not guarantee victory, but its absence almost guarantees defeat. Understanding the financial side of war helps explain decisions that seem irrational on the surface. Leaders may continue conflicts not for immediate gain but to protect credit, reputation, alliances, or access to resources. Peace negotiations often include financial terms because money shapes the future as much as borders do. In the modern world, transparency, speed, and interconnected markets mean that wars are felt globally. A conflict in one region can affect food prices elsewhere. Investors react within seconds. Governments must consider financial consequences alongside military ones. The relationship between war and finance is not fixed. It evolves with technology, institutions, and culture. Yet the core lesson remains. War is never only about weapons. It is about who can organize resources, sustain trust, and manage cost over time. As long as states compete and resources remain uneven, wars will continue to intersect with finance. The challenge for humanity is to reduce the incentives that make conflict profitable and to strengthen systems that reward stability, cooperation, and shared growth. Only by understanding how deeply money and war are linked can societies hope to limit destruction and build a more durable peace.